Is it time? There we go. Plenty of nutmeg in that drink. Hopefully we'll have another drink here in just a moment. Welcome to Live at the Nutmeg Tavern. I am your host, John Townsend, and we're going to be talking fun historical stuff today and sort of melding historical with modern life. It ought to be a great and fun topic. And we'll be covering your kind of questions on that and whatever sounds good for you. I'm joined behind the bar by Ryan.
Hello.
There's Ryan behind the bar. He's got the drink today. He failed to give us the drink in the last 2 weeks, but this time he's going to make it happen. And behind the console, on the other side of the time vortex wormhole, is Aaron.
Hello.
Making all the technology work today. We failed last week with our technology.
Not today, though.
But today we're going to make it happen.
Yep.
Do we need to cover anything before we get to this main topic and we introduce our guest today?
I don't think so.
No, we are going straight to guest today. Our guest today in Tennessee, East Tennessee is, let me put my ear in, is Jamie Tyree. And Jamie's got lots of fun experience living taking historical homesteading concepts and historical technologies and working them into his modern life. Got a lot of experience with that in his job and in his living experience, and some of that kind of same thing that I do. And so we're going to talk to Jamie. Jamie, welcome.
Well, thank you. Glad to be here.
Jamie, can you tell us a little bit of, now people if they've watched a lot of the back catalog of videos, there was one where we talked about blacksmithing and, did we do two of them or was it just one?
We just did one.
Just one.
Jamie.
So you're, as a vocation, you're a blacksmith who works a lot in wrought iron, correct?
Yes, that is correct. Yeah.
And you work with a lot of historical designs and kind of out of period kind of materials, and you're experienced with even the sort of training method, sort of like they would have done in the 18th century.
Yes, about as close as what you're going to find in this country. You know, actually part of my training, if OSHA or any of those folks would have known about it, my masters would have been hung. But yeah, I got as close to what would have happened in the old world. I got as close to it, I guess, as you really can.
So, we can come back and talk about that, but what I want to talk about is sort of historical homesteading and that historical homestead technology, building technologies, and all those kinds of things where we can, as a modern person, we can go back in and grab those technologies and bring them into our modern life. So tell me a little bit about your current homestead.
Okay, and just so you'll know, for those of you out there watching, I'm in my shop right now, and I'm actually right beside the railroad and Murphy's Law. Here comes a train. So you're going to hear it in the background.
Okay.
But anyway, yeah, of course, I've always had a love of history, especially historic architecture, and we're very lucky here in East Tennessee. This is sort of a large melting pot where the immigrants from Germany, England, France, all sort of come together in this area. So we have those three mixes of architecture. Nowhere else in the world is architecture like it is here. And I've always liked our timber frame structures, our log structures, and they were actually, historically speaking, they were a couple of
That's a loud train.
Yeah. Hopefully that'll be the last one through in this hour. They were actually a couple of cob houses, which was a very English style of building out of mud right here in our county. So I've always wanted to build a homestead, if you will, trying to save as many of these structures as I can. And then when my wife Angie and I got married, she was into the tiny home living, I guess you would call it. I'd have never even heard of such a thing until I got with her, and we started discussing this, and I said, wow, we've got all these timber frames and stuff around here that you can get for nothing. I mean, we're eat up with them. and that's a tiny house, free for the taking. And so that's really what started it. And we also wanted to have our the Bellry Shire is the name of our farm, after her and mine's last name. We wanted it to be like that would have been 300 years ago. You didn't have everything under one roof. You had a separate structure for everything. So our kitchen, and right now we live up overhead, was originally a kitchen off of a large timber frame built in the 1830s. The wash house, as we call it, or the Fitzgerald, is a timber frame corn crib built in the 1890s. That's where the laundry's at, as well as where we take our shower and all that. Built in the 1880s, 1890s. We actually do have an outhouse, which is built out of cob, which is mud and straw and sand. Probably my favorite building on the whole place, just because it's so substantial. But at first, it was really awkward to get used to, because we're all used to going and doing everything we want to do under one roof. And it's not too bad in the summertime. At first, it wasn't bad in the summertime. It was a little rough in the wintertime, especially having to go outside to another building to take a shower or to go use the bathroom. But it very quickly, that wore off. We got used to it, and now I would have it no other way. To be honest, I can't even imagine having everything under one roof. And so we're trying as best we can to live, in a sense, as we can, what 200 years ago, what those people would have experienced, going to the outhouse, or, doing your laundry in a separate building or such as that. I don't know if that answered the question or not. But.
No, you did a great job. So, timber frame structures, multiple timber frame structures, cob structures, and are you working on a log one too, right?
Yes, we're working on a log house it's relatively new, and it was built in the 1890s. Mm-hmm. But we're turning it into a cook cabin. We're putting a very large hearth. I'm in the process of building that right now. A very large cooking hearth on that, and we're actually doing it the exact same way that it would have been done 150 years ago. We're using mud as mortar. It's
Mm-hmm.
dry stacked stone, just using mud to fill in the voids.
Sure.
And then we'll come back after it's built, and we'll do that with the brick too. And once it's built, then I'll come back and take out a bit of the mud that's on the outside and tuck point that with a lime mortar
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
to seal it up.
Sure. So, on one hand, for somebody like me who loves experimenting, especially with historical and different sorts of, building construction methods, I look at that and think that is just, so cool, because you get to experiment with all these different types, learn the neat parts about each one of them, and each time you learn the new skills you add to. But I'm sure there are other people out there watching saying, why would anyone want to live like that? Do you have an answer to that?
Well, I do have an answer to that, and there are several reasons why you would want to live like that. One reason is, most people live in too big of a house. They spend the bulk of their time cleaning or going to their day job to make that big mortgage payment or whatever like that. Whereas if you spend your money on buying a piece of land, and be it building from scratch with modern materials or doing salvage like we do, taking down old structures, you, for one, have a piece of history. Two, you have a structure that is not going to move around because it's built out of green timber. Once you build it, right there is the way it's going to stay. It's not going to settle. Three, you have a structure that is better for the inside environment, better for your personal environment inside, because it's not made out of any kind of treated material or anything like that.
Right.
And four, the old structures, they have already went through all the storms and wind and stuff that make structures move back and forth and stuff. They've done settled in and wore in. So they're actually a stronger structure. They don't, I don't know how many of you have been in a house when it comes to really strong wind and you can hear the house shake or move around. You don't get none of that. But really the biggest thing is the cleaner air, believe it or not. In the kitchen that we live in, it's kitchen downstairs and living quarters upstairs, we used what's called slip straw, straw coated with a clay slurry, and packed it into the walls, and then a lime plaster on the outside and a clay plaster on the inside. Well, the lime plaster on the outside, and many of your old structures were limed in some form or fashion. It's actually an antiseptic, so the air coming through the wall, and you can't stop it no matter what the building material is. That air comes through the wall. It cleans the air. It's not bringing in allergens, bacteria, and stuff like that. And then it also helps regulate the moisture inside your structure. It keeps it more equal with what's on the outside. The clay is a natural, for lack of a better term, a sponge. Sure. It wants to wick water. So if you get a higher, like when you're cooking inside, your humidity goes way up. Well, the clay sets into motion, and it's absorbing that moisture and pushing it to the outside. So it regulates your humidity inside. It's a more consistent humidity. And the temperature, it's actually cooler. We have no air conditioner inside any of our structures. And even the hottest day of the summer, you can go upstairs in that kitchen and lay down and take a nap middle of the day and sleep fine. It's not hot.
So I love the idea of going back and salvaging the structures, not only salvaging, but sort of rescuing structures that are going to get lost. But of course, the biggie that comes into mind here, and of course, you and I, well, especially I, live in a very fortunate little location. And tell me about the idea of building codes.
Well, that's one thing. And anybody here in Greenfield that's listening to this, keep your mouth shut while I'm getting ready to say. We are very lucky here. We have got some very open-minded building inspectors that do appreciate history and do appreciate architecture. As a matter of fact, I'll not say his name, but he was raised amongst the poorest of the poor and was actually raised in a log house with no indoor plumbing. He and his, I think it was 4 brothers, all slept in the same bed, just really poor. And he told me this himself, but now as he's in his 60s, I think. Looking back on that was the best time of his life, and said that the food tasted better, the air smelled better, everything was better because they had less. So when we started building our structures, out of ignorance, we were so small. Our kitchen that we live in is 14 by 18, 14 feet by 18 feet. I didn't think we had to have a permit, so I didn't give it a second thought. Well, then suddenly we got a letter in the mail one day that said, oh yes, we were supposed to be inspected. And if we didn't get after it right away, we would be, there would be a lawsuit, charges brought. Well, anyway, so I called, and he come over, and he walked into the structure, fell in love with it, and I built this. These structures are built stronger than anything you're going to get built today from a contractor, because I'm the one living in it. So, and he said that. He said, the spacing of these floor joists would never pass code. The slope of these steps would never pass code, but these are old timbers. They can handle a lot more weight than our modern timber because it's old growth timber. Yeah. You have taken a historical structure and with keeping it the way it was originally in mind, did it as best you possibly could. So it falls under a different heading, if you will, than sure. New construction. So he said, you're exempt. And he said, and I was very honest with him. I mean, I told him everything I did. I did not try to hide anything. And I think that's what really done it. If you're honest with them, they will try to work with you, or that's the way it is here. And he looked at all of our structures, and he said, all these structures are better than anything that you'll get built today. And we've not had a bit of problem with him since.
Hey, John.
Yeah.
Can you have Jamie reintroduce himself?
So Jamie, a lot of people join the live stream sort of as it's going instead of just right at the beginning. So can you kind of reiterate? Can you go back over a quick description of who you are and what you do?
Okay, those of you that's late comers, shame on you. I'm Jamie Tyree. I live in Limestone, Tennessee. It's way up in the very northeast corner of Tennessee. Blacksmith by trade, 30 plus years now. And my wife and I love historical structures, and we're building a farm with those structures, trying to save as much history as we can and actually live the way folks used to and still have some of the niceties that we have today, like running water and such.
And everyone needs to go back and watch the blacksmith video we did with Jamie.
Yeah, check out that blacksmith
last
video.
Summer, I think.
So, Jamie, you probably got a laundry list of things you still want to do, skills you want to learn, or building styles that you want to sort of conquer. Tell me about what's in your to-do list.
Oh boy. You said we were spending 3 hours in the tavern today? Yeah, I guess right now, of course, we're working on the Solomon cabin. All of our structures have names, by the way, that reference the people the farms they come from. Once we get the hearth done on that, there's not a whole lot more to do on it. Then we're switching over and building a timber frame blacksmith shop. That's the next thing coming. It will have cob walls, timber frame with cob infield walls, and actually will have its own courtyard. After that, we're going to start the main house, which is going to be 16 by 38. It's going to be a cob house, 100% cob with white plaster on outside. And then after that, we're building a carpenter shop, a timber frame carpenter shop, which will probably be something like an 18 by 24, I think we figured on. And then after that, we're going to build what we're calling the garrison house. It will be a cantilevered structure like you see in England, the Tudor styles in England, or the Fachwerk structures in Germany. It will be a log first story with a timber frame second story. The second story will cantilever or overhang the first floor by 4 feet all the way around. And we're actually thinking about building a palisade around it.
To keep people out. Yeah.
And digging the moat around the rest of the property.
Right.
Right, yeah. We've got 12 acres. It's our goal to fill it up.
Fill it up.
I got a little bit of housekeeping to do.
Yeah.
Or else this is going to get out of hand.
Yeah, go ahead. Ryan's going to do us some, what you got, super chat or questions?
Super chat. Number one, though. We have a drink today.
Yeah, the drink.
It is Samson. People have been asking about it.
Yeah, there's Samson, and I had some historical reference. What was that?
Yeah, I don't recall what book it was from.
It was in a book.
Yeah, it was from. But anyway, 3 parts cider, 1 part rum.
Yeah, and whoa, let me tell you, it's quite the drink.
Well, there you go. And then let me see here. Mandatory carry comes in on Super Chat. I'm at work, but keep fighting. Sue O'Connor on Super Chat, tipping my bartender. Thank you, Sue.
Thank you, Sue.
Dominica Sasanka on Super Chat. As always, good to see you guys. Speed of Style Tony on Super Chat. Tried the omelet recipe the other night. Different from modern ones, but very good. Delise Maloney Pyron sends one of those pear chicken fellas that says, "How's it going?" And
it's going well.
Ryan Mercer on Super Chat. Choo choo, chugga chugga chugga. He heard the train. And then Maxer Cool says on Super Chat, thank you, Townsend, for bringing on the great guest in your video with Jamie a while back, and I was instantly impressed with his knowledge and dedication to his work. It's great to see him again. So that's where we're at now. I finish this up Super Chat. Thank you guys so much.
Great.
Somebody says Ryan makes everything better. It actually says rum, but I'm taking it as Ryan. Thank you very much. Back to Jamie.
Did you have any questions that were like pertinent? Or are you just gonna hold those? Or
there are some great questions, but I'm gonna hold them off for a little bit while longer.
Okay. Yeah. So that you mentioned right off the bat. I think both the blacksmith shop and that next house, that house made all of cob. I've made a lot of cob, and making a house, anything large out of a lot of cob, sounds like a massive task. What do you have in store for all that? How are you going to make all that cob, Jamie? That's a ton of cob. I mean, tons of.
Well, we spent $30,000 on a tractor with front end loader.
There you go.
So,
there you go.
Yeah, there's in our research, here in the States, and I mean this in the kindest way to anybody here, but we tend to do things in a more romantic way, if you will. Maybe thinking, oh, this is the way they used to do it, whatever. But if you look at the folks in England, they're not trodden clay and sand to mix up their cob. They're using front loaders and stuff like that. They're doing it on an industrial scale. Of course, it's never went away over. It's been in use for over 1,000 years and continues to be used. And that's what we do. Any way that we can find a way to use modern techniques, modern equipment to achieve the same results, that's what we're going to do. Yeah. We don't, years ago they would have had horses or oxen to tread in the clay pits and stuff, and had a lot of people, really cheap labor. Yeah. We don't have that. Exactly. We don't have that now. Yeah. But yeah, we have a lot of clay on our property too, and we have a pond that's full of water, so we've got everything we need.
Well, that is, yeah. There's only so much we can do as modern people to do everything in an historical manner, because we do not have the same resources they have had, especially in the way of having labor or the kind of time that they had to work at a project. So yeah, sometimes it's like, okay, I have to have a modern shortcut because there's just no other way to do it. Time constraints and labor constraints that we have today. People cost a lot more today than they did in, every man hour is worth a lot of money today. So
well, there's that argument too with like just using a tractor versus a horse, or it's not many people keep livestock anymore, not compared to what they did. So
right.
Well, in all reality, too, a tractor is a lot cheaper to maintain than a horse is.
Yes.
Yeah. People do have horses today, but my goodness, they look for an excuse to get tangled up in a fence, and you have to call the vet, or they have to be shod, caught in the farrier and stuff. Tractor, you just have to change the oil every so many hours, and there you go.
Yeah, and just try to find a farrier. When you really want, a farrier to come out, you can't get one. I don't know what it is about farriers. They're just like impossible. Oh, so you've got cob structures, and we're talking about structures there. What about skills that, or techniques that you still haven't still on that to-do technique list? What do you think?
Oh, that's a big one too. One of the things that Angie and I both want to do is to make our own tiles, roofing tiles and floor tiles. Mm-hmm. We're very lucky in our clay. We don't just have red clay, but we have a yellow clay as well as a blue marl clay.
Wow.
And so we want to do that at some point, and pottery too. I'd love to make our own cooking pots and stuff, clay ones, and brick making, oddly enough. We're wanting to do brick and such. Oh gosh. And in the woodworking shop, of course, I've for quite a few years now trying to learn pre-industrialized woodworking, meaning pre-electric motor.
Sure.
Woodworking, and the spring pole lathe or the treadle lathe, stuff like that. That's skills I want to learn. Glass work, making windows. Sash windows, that's a biggie. And I've tried, and I'll tell you, I'm a failure when it comes to windows. So that's just a few.
Well, that's making glass. I played around with glass, but going to windows is it's a big. That's like saying, well, I've played with small engines. Now I want to make a race car. I mean, that's a long way to go. So, yeah. Did I have my? I don't have. Didn't have my little piece of clay up here. I was going to bring it into the live stream, and
I can go get it. I think we're good.
It's probably down in my office, right?
I'll run for it.
Okay.
Everybody, be good.
All right. So he just left. He's just leaving the technology to go crazy. So you guys be good out there. So. Jamie, you're in eastern Tennessee. So what time? I mean, obviously you're salvaging structures, historical structures, right in your area. What is the time frame that area is being settled, and what kind of structures do you see, close to you?
They were people down here well before the Revolution. My people come in here in the 1760s. My wife's people were in here before that. But you have a big influx of immigration into here right after the Revolution was over, especially by 86, 87.
Mm-hmm.
Man, they were pouring in here. You still see there's still a few log structures that are late 18th century. Quite a few stone structures, stone houses around here that are certainly from that time period, but the bulk of the structures you'll find are very early 19th century.
Oh, there he is. There he's got it. Yeah. So, and you've gotten mostly timber frame structures, some log structure, and
Yeah.
So I didn't know that there were cob structures in your area from that sort of time period, or at all.
There are none existing
Okay.
now. In our local Greene County, they did a history book. I think it was in 1976 in commemoration of the bicentennial.
Mm-hmm.
And they make note that there were several. There was some fella that was an immigrant, if I remember correctly. He was an immigrant out of England, or his forebears not too far back were. And it was a big write-up, a big thing, him building this house out of mud. And got the house done, and something happened. He got killed. I don't remember what happened to him, but he never got it plastered on the outside. So it really weathered away,
Kinda
to where
away.
it wasn't leaking. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So they were a couple of them built like that.
Right. I didn't know that there were any cob structures that were done, maybe off of the East Coast, and even then, it's kind of a rare
Right.
construction technique for that time period. So, you talked about the different clay sources that you have, and I'm envious that you have more than one clay. So this piece I just fired this week. Let me get my ear fixed. This is the clay that's from our property. So when you saw the chimney being built, and we had our clay pit, and we made the cob out of that. This is clay from that same clay pit. So I'm really excited about being able to use materials right from the area that we're going to be building, not only to make pottery, but to do bricks and to do other cob work. So it's great. Now, I would be excited to see what happens with your different clays and how they fire out and what they look like. That, I mean, just the idea that you're coming into an area, any one little particular spot, and you've got resources. You bought 12 acres. We're on a 20-acre kind of plot, and every little spot has its own set of resources. Oh, I've got trees to work with. I've got water to work with. I've got clay to work with, or different kinds of rock piles. I think it's just so intriguing, and most people today, they don't think about that at all. They buy a property, it's like, oh, it's got a house on it, and
Right.
Whatever, right?
Yeah, and that's the whole point too, and us doing all these that we're doing is, you buy a piece of property that already has a house, or you have a new house built, a modern stick frame house. There's no connection to nothing. You're not connected to the ground you're on. You're not connected to the house. You've got nothing in it. It's basically just a place to shelter. And that's not what we wanted. We wanted to, when we look at that structure, when it comes time to do maintenance on that house or whatever it may be, it's really no different than taking care of a child or well, I would say an elderly parent. It's your job to tend to them as they weather and all that, because you've got a personal connection to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that, some modern person gets a piece of property, they build a house on it. The wood is from Canada, who knows where, all over the place. The different structural pieces of wood. In fact, nothing of their house has probably come from anywhere close. Maybe the concrete that gets poured in to the floor or, into a foundation might be some aggregate that's made, 50 miles away, but everything else in their entire house is made from all over the world, little tiny pieces and all put together. When you think about it, it's not very efficient, at least in where all these things are coming from.
Not at all. And it's, not to be a tree hugger or anything, but it's not kind to Mother Earth either, for that matter. With emissions and all that. And that was the reason. This piece of property I bought, I looked for a long time, to find just the right piece of property, and that was the reason, because I knew we had the resources there. Like I say, the clay. We've got water on the farm. Unfortunately, we don't have much timber, but I've got friends that have a lot of timber. We have limestone right there, and that's another thing that I've learned how to do, is how to cut and shape limestone for foundations and such. But we have everything right there. I mean, it's heaven on earth, really.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, I've got people in the chat asking if Jamie's Amish. So one more time, Jamie, I think we need to talk about who you are and what we're talking about, but also what you do.
My name is Joseph Yoder. I'm Pentecostal Amish.
Stop that.
No, I am not Amish. I am not Amish at all. I have a skin condition. That's the reason the mustache stays shaved off. But I'm bent on having a beard, and that's what I'm going to do. Anyway, no, I'm not Amish. I'm a regular East Tennessee ridge running redneck. So.
And you're a blacksmith by vocation.
Yeah.
Yeah. To cut back just slightly, that idea of building with the materials that you have at hand, with the resources that you have at hand, also changes the style and the type of architecture that everyday houses are made out of. And again, that's one of those things that we're starting to lose. We have this sort of cosmopolitan construction technique, or cosmopolitan architecture, that we've lost these little regional styles and materials.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
Well, that's right. The cookie cutter houses have done away with local vernacular, for sure. And that's something, like I said earlier, this is a melting pot of three nationalities: the English, the German, and the French, and some Scotch and all that in there too. But I think the bulk of the Scotch and Irish come from England before they got here. Mm-hmm. But you can see very distinct styles in these structures. You can almost, quite a few of them, especially log houses, you can tell if it was of English descent or German descent that built those houses, just because of the way they framed the logs up, and especially the timber frames, how they did the pegs, how they joined the timbers. The Germans had a very distinct style of doing it. So did the English, so did the French. And yeah, no two of them are the same. And when you're driving down the road and you see one, well, the very next one you come to looks nothing like it at all. And it's a wonderful thing. It's a constant treasure hunt anytime you go anywhere. Whereas the cookie cutter houses, well, they're just that. 1 in 1,000 look the same.
Mm-hmm. Mm. So as you've been salvaging historical structures, sometimes you get surprises. Have you had any interesting surprises in these salvage?
Yeah,
yes,
that's how they found the money for his property.
Yeah. One time I was tearing down a log structure, and in between two of the logs was a bit for a horse. Mm-hmm. And I took it to a friend of mine who dealt in horses, and it was definitely 18th century, and it was a German-made bit that it was German silver on the whatever the sidebars are called. Mm-hmm. And he said it would have been an extremely expensive bit at the time, and why it was put in between the logs with the chinks in there, I don't know.
They were hiding it maybe, huh?
Perhaps, but it was definitely put in when the house was built, because this house still had all the original chinks in between the logs. Mm-hmm. Let's see, the latest timber frame we took down when we were and it was built in 1862. We know the exact date on it. Upstairs, we were taking off wall boards and popped off some boards that was over the door, the header up overhead, and there was a handful of cut nails that obviously when they were putting up the boards, he had made the nails in there and then put the board over it. Yep. So those nails had never been struck with a hammer. We've got those put up. Brick, we've seen all kinds of funny things with the bricks, animal footprints, The friend of mine found one that had a little baby's footprint in it. Many thumbprints, fingerprints, some writing and stuff on the brick. And then there was one structure that had a stone foundation, and out of the whole foundation, it was relatively small stone except for the northeast corner. It was one giant limestone rock, but none of the rest of it was that way. And some of the people watching this will know exactly what that means. But that was pretty neat.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, do you think we can go into some questions that folks will have about these structures?
Yes, let's do it.
Okay. All right. Jamie, you can head these off, and then John, you can fill in.
Okay.
Is there a need to protect the timber from pests like termites? And what did they do for that sort of thing?
What do you think?
Okay, so the structures we see now, make no mistake, they were shysters back then as are now. They were people that did really poor quality work. The structures we see now are, for the most part, the cream of the crop. They were the right distance off the ground to where termites, would not get up into the timber and such like that. But you must remember that these old timbers were old growth timbers. They were very tight grained, a very dense wood. As a matter of fact, we're blessed with tulip poplar here. Even now there's big stuff, but back then there was more poplar than there was anything else. The termites wouldn't touch it. They would actually go into the oak structure and eat all the oak and eat around the poplar.
Wow.
For whatever reason, I do not know, but I've seen that in several structures. But keeping it dry is the biggest thing, maintenance. There's a saying in England, put good boots and a big hat on a house and it will live forever. And what that means is the foundation, have the wood way up off the ground, have big overhangs to keep the water away from it.
So somebody else asked, when building with cob, can you do multiple stories or floors?
Absolutely. There's many houses in England that are 3 and 4 stories tall that are out of cob, that are 600 and 700 years old now, still in everyday use. You can go to the Middle East, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, the tallest in the world that's still in existence is 11 stories tall. And it's 100% out of cob, and it seems like that it might be in the neighborhood of 500 years old.
Can you imagine stacking mud, 11 stories tall?
I thought the chimney was hard. How did they keep clay floors clean in homes in the 18th century?
Clay's.
Ask that again.
Clay floors, how do you keep them clean?
With a broom?
Yeah, clay floors, they're going to pack very, very, if you keep filling it in and you fill it in with different items, it can be as almost polished. So clay floors can be amazing when they're done.
And also, it was very common to mix a little bit of lime, hydrated lime, burnt, mix that with the clay, the top layer, and it would seal off. It actually turns into stone when the lime reabsorbs its carbon dioxide. But that makes a very dense, hard floor that doesn't really make a whole lot of dust.
Yep.
So this one is probably going to be more about where these folks are coming from. But the question is, did hunters' cabins, fishermen's cabins, and cottages have different style building and furniture?
What do you think, Jamie?
That's just like today. It depends on how much money you've got, or what you're using that structure for. If you're just there to hunker down at night and you're right up first thing the next morning out, as a long hunter, hunting deer and stuff, you're not concerned about any pleasantries. You're just there to stay warm at night and somewhere to store your hides. As far as a cottage goes, if this is something you're just using every now and again, your furniture and things are going to be minimal because you're not there all the time. But I would think that money's the biggest thing, how much money you want to spend. Well, if it's just something you'll use part-time, you're not going to spend much money, if you even had the money to spend.
Yep.
Okay. Somebody's asking, was wattle and daub still a thing, or did that die in the medieval times?
Absolutely, it is still a thing, still to this day, yeah. And that's probably part of my blacksmith shop, the new shop. We will probably do wattle and daub in that, yeah.
Have you done that before, Jamie?
I have.
Okay.
Yeah,
what
as a matter of fact...
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
It's okay. Well, I just want to say this right quick. I'm a motor mouth. Waddling daub is actually more convenient in today's modern construction because you can build a wider wall out of timber, put wattle and daub on the outside and inside, and have modern insulation in between if you want. It's a very versatile wall covering.
And somebody asked about oxblood floors.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've read that for years, and I'm not convinced on that at all. It takes a lot of oxen to give up blood to do much. It's not like there's 20 gallons in each one. You might get 5 gallons because all that blood, still in all the vessels and stuff like that. You can only get so much. And I have to wonder, of course, I know they didn't have the same sense of smell as far as things that they felt like stunk like we do today. I can't imagine that would be a very pleasant thing, but I don't, it just doesn't make sense to me why you would do that. Why would you not use the blood to make, blood pudding or something like that, something to eat, and you can go out and burn limestone and make lime and mix it with your floor material. That makes just as hard and sustainable. But I don't know. I'm just shooting but that's always been my thought.
In your area, are you coming up with any chestnut structures? Did you see that happening?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, lots of them.
Yeah, chestnut, we don't see it, hear about it today because of the blights. Chestnut was a very, very popular wood in the time period, at least.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Yeah,
right. More questions will come in, but you guys can talk a little bit more. That catches us up pretty good.
Well, I don't have anything right off the top of my head. I'm excited. In the future, we've got, this whole summer basically is set aside for doing sort of homesteady things out there at the cabin site. Mostly technology things, not agriculture necessary. So we've got planned a brick project. Jamie's in theory going to come down or come up and work with us on that. Tell me a little bit. You're obviously, both you guys, you and your wife, are interested in brick things. Tell me a little bit about what interests you about bricks and why you want to experiment with that.
Well, I think before modern times, in a given area, where they were using bricks and structures, it gave a personal touch to the structures, because here we might have yellow clay. 5 miles down the road, they might have the deepest, darkest red clay. So it gives a individual appearance to the structure, for one reason. 2, it's just being able to do your own thing. Have your own material. Granted, you're not going to make them as cheap as you can buy them. It's physically impossible to do that.
Right.
But you can't grow your own garden as cheap as you can buy the food from the grocery store either. But we grow a garden because we know what's in it. We know what the labor is. It's ours. We know everything about it, and it's the same way with the brick.
Yeah, as I've been doing more and more brick research, it's been just utterly fascinating. There was a reference that I just came onto the other day that was, super early. We're talking early 17th century, and the settlers get off the ship, and like one of the first things they do is start making bricks. It's that kind of an important of an industry that it's one of the very first things to do, and they're more used to working with that than they are with these primeval forests that they are faced with. What do I do with all these giant trees? They're very hard to deal with, but bricks are all these uniform sized building material. Hey, even if it takes a little bit longer, I can make these bricks. I'm just fascinated by the sort of lack of technological development that there is in bricks. Until you get to the 19th century and you have machines making them, bricks have been made for centuries, and it's essentially the same kind of process. They're fascinating.
Well, actually, let's see. I think brick have been made for something like 5,000 years now.
Right.
And as far as the settlers fresh off the boat coming in here, well, depending on where they come from, but especially if they were from southern England, you think about the Great Fire of London. London was all timber framed. Well, then it was made a law. You had to build it out of stone or brick. Well, why not use that same thought process here?
Right, and it
Or
seems like
that's what I'm always
yeah, and it seems like there was there's been in the past a controversy about whether or not a lot of brick was imported or whether it was actually made here in the colonies early on, and it seems like not that many bricks were actually imported, and the vast majority of bricks were made right here because we had all the materials to make them. And we don't think about people building a house today and saying, "Oh, we need bricks for the chimney. Let's make them." But that's what happened all the time in the 19th century. Somebody would have a homestead, and it's like, "Well, we need to build a chimney, or we need to build a foundation." Did they say, "Hey, let's go, find some factory 100 miles away to ship us the bricks"? They said, "No, dig a hole in the yard. Let's make some bricks."
That's right. That's exactly right. And whereas today you have, if you want to have a house built, you call Joe Schmo general contractor, and he's got carpenters under his employ, and they've got masons and all that. Well, that's not the way it used to be. It used to, when you was building a house, which it was a big process anyway, but the master carpenter was the general contractor. And then he went out and found the independent masons or the shinglers or whatever it may be, the timber framers, and then they come in and did their own thing and then left, and it was very much done on a production basis, I believe, just like it is now. Of course, obviously wasn't as fast, but it was a much bigger deal back then. You had to think way ahead of time because you had to gather up all the peoples to do this stuff.
Okay, Jamie, you hold on there. I am going to touch base with the brand new Patreon people that we have this week. So every week I try to get the new people on Patreon. We've got lots of folks that help us out on Patreon. They just give us this small amount of money each month, and it's a great way to system that kind of sets that up. The new people this week: Samuel Cassidy, Cheryl McDonald, Deborah Block, badgers. I don't know if it's like a whole den of badgers but they're badgers. Victor Johnson, Keith McCormick, Rob, Amanda Webb, Chris Bujara. I hope I got that one right. TJ Pilsifer, Aaron Horde, Thomas Foster, Amanda Marie, and Joseph James. Those are the brand new folks on Patreon, and usually like every 2 weeks or so we try to have a special Patreon live stream. So hopefully next week we'll be able to get to the special Patreon live stream. We've got exciting stuff coming up. Let's see, Monday we have another cabin video where we're working on the cabin.
Yep.
Right? That's coming along, right, Aaron?
Monday. Yep, ready to go for Monday. Or
okay.
99% there.
It's 99. You better be, right?
So, I got some super chat stuff.
Yes, super chat.
Kimberly Sasato just said, started my first hand sewing project this weekend with using some beautiful fabric I bought from Colonial Williamsburg online.
Great.
She's excited. Steve Peachy, Christine Pearson, and Mummy Creature XX all sent in donations without comments. So thank you very much for that.
Yes.
And then Jamie, if you can hear me, I have a question for you. When I'm working on projects and I'm reading journals and then I'm working on the project, I oftentimes figure out that my assumption about how this was going to happen was completely wrong. And I'm assuming that you've had that happen when you're tearing down these structures, when you're putting them back up. What are a few times where it's just not going the way that you assumed it was going to go, and you learned quite a bit in the process?
Oh, that's pretty much everything we do. Yeah, we have the problem today of we've not been exposed to timber framing. Let's say the bulk of the structures we took down are timber frames. We see things on YouTube or read books, and they say, well, it was done this way. Well, there is not any one way of doing anything. And I guess the last timber frame that we took down, and it was quite a large. It was a 20 by 40, 2-story. The top plate, foolish me, and it was popper, one piece. The plate was one piece. It was probably a 5 by 6, quite small. And I said, well, gosh, if we hook a rope on one end and one on the other and put a snatch block or a pulley, we can just let it down real easy. I didn't nail any kind of reinforcement to it or nothing else, because when it was put up, it was green. So it would have been springy. It wouldn't have been brittle. Well, when I started letting it down, you know what happened. Of course, they was like maybe, I think there was 4 mortises cut down its length, snap, right in two. But I think it's not just with us that happens, though, because in this same structure, this structure was wonderful. There was so much information I learned from this structure. There were a lot of mistakes you could see that they had done, and they corrected themselves. Mortises being in the wrong place, braces put in the wrong place. As a matter of fact, the doors were put where the doors were going. They had done cut the mortises for the braces. And they had cut the mortises and put the braces in on the other end. Well, you've got to put the door somewhere, you want in a corner, so they had to, remove those braces. Several things like that we found. But, yeah, and taking down log structures, I mean, the process of how to take down the rafters and not damage them, because my wife says I'm a skin flint. I prefer frugal. I don't want to waste material. I want to use all the material. So, I'm always trying to figure out how can I get down every single little piece, even though I may not have a use for it right now, I might later on.
You just never know. Yeah.
That's right. And that has been a tremendous learning curve. You have to reverse engineer. How did they put it up and what process, and then you do that in reverse. And yeah, we've made a lot of mistakes doing that too, because they would do stuff that's not conventional. So just to name a few,
5 just came on Super Chat. They're a regular commenter, and they had a question. Just made it. They said, any homestead pest control tips, critters, insects, that sort of stuff?
Pest control, what do you think?
Once again, people did not think of things the way we do now. They didn't consider it or think of it as pests necessarily. It was just, that was part of life.
Well, I think really that he might be asking you as a modern homesteader.
Borax is your friend. 20 mule team borax. It will kill termites. When you're building these structures, pour that on top of your foundation, and that will help with termites. As far as critters, buy a good dog. It'll take care of the critters. We've not had a mouse in the house since we got this little dog we got now, Betsy. But it's really just common sense stuff. Keep bushes and stuff away from your house. That will cut down on ants, termites, snakes, and it will also cut down on moisture being held against your structure, creating dry rot and allowing the termites to do even more. Just stuff like that.
All right. Thank you, Jamie. John, we need to think about final questions and
Yeah, final questions. Do I have any final questions? I mean, I think it's. I'm super excited about the projects that we've got coming on this summer. Jamie's going to be part of some of that. We've got a lot of stuff coming up. Do I have a final question for Jamie? Are you ready for the drive up to Indiana, Jamie?
518 miles. I've done looked it up. I have spent 36 years in the blacksmith shop. I have never driven 518 miles by myself. This is going to be a learning experience, I have to admit.
Well, I'm excited to have you up here. So, thank you, Jamie, for all your kind of knowledge and experience and coming on to the live stream. Thank you so much for joining us here for this one. And it's been great. We finally got the technology and all that to work out so that we can do this special kind of thing. And then sometime soon we'll get even closer together and we can actually be in the same room at the same time. So that'll be fun.
I look forward. Thank you all. It's been a great pleasure.
Thank you, Jamie.
Thanks, Jamie.
Thank you
Appreciate
so
it.
much.
So, what else do we have to cover before we go, Ryan?
Monday's video is going to be great.
Monday's video is going to be great. Aaron promises me that it's going to be good. I am excited to see what's going on with that. We've got we got a whiteboard full of projects. It's just like, how are we ever going to get all of this done? And I'm just, yes.
I do have something else. Somebody in the chat was they were thanking Angelina in customer service.
Yes.
And so other than the people that you see in this live stream, there are a ton of people that work here. They all work hard. They all do a great job. But it's really cool when you take the time to call them out. And so I wanted to make sure to say, Angelina,
Yes.
you're awesome. Thank you so much.
Yes. We do have a lot of folks that are sort of they're the ones you don't see on camera, right? The hidden people that really make things happen. We've got all the wonderful people, Lauren, and Angeline in customer service. We got people in shipping that make those boxes go out there. Dan, make sure they get there on time. And we got seamstresses that make these wonderful clothing for us. So it is, obviously it's a giant joint effort. Even Josh down there making things happen down in the workshop in Brandon. So it's a lot of stuff going on. And to make all these video things happen, besides these guys, it takes you guys out there that are interested, and that moral support is so important, especially in this day and age when it's hard to know. It's like, do people really want to see this? Yes. You guys are out there saying, yes, we want to see more of this. So we're going to do our very best to bring you more of what we do here at Townsend's. I'm so excited to be able to give you at least a glimpse of how all this kind of stuff works and what it was like in the 18th century. The comments, the sharing the videos, the support we get, like the super chat or the wonderful Patreon supporters, people that check out the things that we have on our website, whether it's books or other items. There's so much, and every day I feel like I'm just scratching the surface of the very most interesting things. Like today we talked about in the live stream, these things, we can bring right into our modern lives, and they can make a difference. The modern life that we live is very weird, and just having a little, a few cornerstones that historically connect us back with our heritage is just so great. So thank you guys for everything you do, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend.